Welcome back to Menopause Mastery. Today I'm talking to Dr. Soum Rakshit. And Dr. Soum is the co-founder and CEO of the award-winning sexual health company called MysteryVibe. And their mission is to make sexual health accessible to all across all ages, genders, and orientations. And so today we're going to get into some often taboo subjects, the idea of sexual pleasure, how to use vibration devices and other devices to improve sexual pleasure and sexual function. And even more importantly, you know, if you look at our lifespan 100 years ago, we averaged up to about 57 years as a woman, I think it was around 53, 54 as a man. So a lot of the experiences that we have as we age are somewhat new experiences because of our life expectancy. But one of the biggest relationship causes for breaking up a relationship is changes in sexual desire and sexual function. And then we have all these other things like pelvic floor pain, urinary incontinence, erectile dysfunction that also affects us as we age. So these devices are biomedical devices, and they can actually help with some of those medically describable and medically diagnostic problems. So beyond just having a lot more fun in the bedroom, these devices can actually help you have better pelvic urinary function. And so we're going to get into all of that. We're going to talk about how to use them, what different devices are there, what they're used for both medically and also for pleasure. And I would say pleasure is also a medical condition if you're not having it. So at the end of the day, we're going to get through all of that. And then we also had a really good conversation about how to open the door to have a conversation with your partner when maybe you're feeling a little bit vulnerable and the fear of rejection is a little bit high. So we're also going to help you maybe open the door to these conversations as well. So join me on Menopause Mastery with Dr. Soum. Welcome to the Menopause Mastery Podcast, a show for women just like you who are ready for more health, vitality, passion, living life with a purpose. I created this show because I knew that women just like me in this second season of life, the season of menopause, are really tapping into their deepest desires. And we're ready to harness our physical and mental health and explore what our true passions are and peel back the layers to uncover exactly what we want out of life. I'm your host, Betty Murray, part geek, part magician, and your new medical bestie with a dash of sass. I love taking the complex science and making it easier to integrate into daily life. So let's join the journey to make this season the best ever. Welcome back to Menopause Mastery. And Dr. Soum, so we have to get into this topic because, women's sexual pleasure, the whole idea of sexuality is such a taboo topic that everybody sort of, their hair stands up on the back of the neck as soon as you bring it up. So I'm so excited to talk to you about your company, what you do, the research out there. But I always love hearing people's story about how we ended up where we are professionally and personally. So tell me a little bit about your story and your trip to MysteryVibe.
So I think it all started with my PhD because I was doing my PhD in a very different part of medical, in ophthalmology, in biomedical engineering, where I was working with eye doctors to create devices to recognize eyes. So I was always very excited about the merger of medicine and engineering and what can be done working with specialists, learning from their fields, and then bringing in our expertise in engineering and creating devices which can help with whatever it is that we are focusing on. So after that, once that project finished and it ended up becoming a really nice company which helped with iris recognition. This is back in the day in 2004 when it was very nascent. Now everyone looks at their phones and unlocks it by looking at a camera, but back then it was such a new thing. So, and seeing that happen over the course of 4 or 5 years was very exciting. And after that got acquired by a company, we felt like we wanted to do something else in biomedical. And it took us a while to figure out. The whole team, we all went on to do different work. My co-founder left to work in Nokia. I left to work in Deloitte. So we all had corporate jobs. Also, we wanted to learn business because that's something you don't really learn in a PhD. You obviously spend all your time on researching and focusing on the tech and the science and the engineering, but not really about business and management. So that's something I really wanted to learn. And 7 years later, And with lots of conversations in between, we decided to start our next biomedical company in gynecology and urology, sexual health, because that seemed to be the biggest thing that everyone talked about, especially after major life events. So after having a kid or having menopause or just aging and arteries getting thinner, because of cholesterol, which is just a matter of diet often. And all of these lead to significant changes in your sex life, and you lose that mystery in the bedroom, which is why we call it MysteryVibe. How can we as a company help bring mystery back into the bedroom after menopause or after prostate cancer or after, not just generally, being together with someone for 10 years? How can you spice up the relationship again? So that's the core of what we do. And the way we do it is devices and conversations. So, devices which are designed by doctors to help with blood flow to help with arousal, dryness, or pain relief, erection, whatever it is that blood flow can help with, and equally conversations on how to start that discussion with your partner, or even with yourself. Like, this is an issue that I want to tackle and I don't want to ignore it. So that's step one, is yourself, talking about it with yourself, doing something about it, and then talking about it with your partner and then doing something about it. So it's very much equally important, the content, the conversations, as the devices and the solutions. So yeah, that's the backstory.
I love the name of your company, bring the mystery back to the bedroom and the sexual part of relationships, because that is, it's a significant part of the relationship. And when that either goes stale or is no longer part of the relationship for whatever reason, there's a big part of intimacy that is gone. And I think,
Yep.
Knowing what I know in my age group, especially women and men over 50, we have probably one of the highest rates of divorce. And a lot of it, when you start to talk to the individuals, this is a linchpin in their relationship. And often part of the dysfunction is different desires, different sexual pleasure. And then, for women, when we go through menopause, we have so many significant changes to our body that often arousal and desire is low. And then it's uncomfortable unless you're doing other things to help out. So let's get into it. So, the first thing I when you were describing your company and where you came from, it's important to note that we're talking about vibration devices and other devices to help with sexual health that come out of bioengineering and biomedical sciences. Because I think a lot of people think these are these weird things that you get from some sketchy store, down in a sketchy part of town. So, how long has biomedical really been looking at helping in this arena? It sounds like it's fairly new. And
it's fairly new. So it's, I would say the last 2 decades has been where engineering and medicine in sexual health has got together. So the oldest piece that I know so we work with the head of urology at King's College in London, Professor Das Gupta. He's our chief medical officer. And the reason I mention that is because he started working on vibration 30 years ago. But very much from an academic perspective is looking at vibration to help men with passing urine if they were having difficulty. So quite specific. But then he's researched on it with engineers over the last 3 decades to see how generally engineering can help. And which is why when we got together, it was a really good fit, because he obviously is a very famous surgeon, but he wanted to get engineers to help him bring his vision to life of all that knowledge about vibration frequencies, about locations in the body where the vibration needs to be delivered. And there is evidence on this for over 100 years, going back to doctors who, there's a movie about this called Hysteria, who created technically the first electromechanical vibrator to solve the challenge of using the hand and getting tired, or even, having pain, because before that they would use the hand to stimulate the woman. And that was 100 years ago. And there has been very detailed literature over the years about frequencies, about locations on vibrations. And that's really what we based our products on, is existing research to start with. And then, and obviously feedback from lots of different specialties of medicine, urology, andrology, gynecology, pelvic floor therapy, just a wide range of input to create the devices. But ultimately, what really made the devices effective was the studies and trials afterwards. So the research and the theory helped us create what is version 1, right? And version 1 was good, but it's only that good that till it's been used by people, lots and lots of people. And now, 9 years later, so we've been doing this for 9 years, we have our most successful medical trial was on genitopelvic pain and penetration pain, which is a huge topic. And that showed a 5x improvement on average across the entire patient population who tried it by using it 3 times a week for 12 weeks. And that's the kind of results that we strive towards, is something that would change your quality of life. Because that much improvement in pain means you would live before that, pre the study, you'd be living with pain as a constant thing. And then post 12 weeks, you wouldn't experience it, or you wouldn't experience it in day-to-day life. So that's kind of what we aim for. And then similarly on a erectile dysfunction device, we focused, the study that is published, we focused on cancer recovery. So colorectal cancer often leads to the surgery after colorectal cancer often leads to nerves getting cut and not being able to naturally get erect again. So the patients we started with had severe ED, a score of 7, a very low score in the IIEF erectile function score. And then by the time, it was only 5 weeks, by the time they finished the study, they were at 15, which is very mild ED. So again, that is the kind of stuff we are always working towards, and the same with arousal disorder, which is the most relevant one, especially during and after menopause, arousal and wetness. And that study, again, over 12 weeks, showed a 2x improvement in arousal using 3 times a week. So that's the kind of things that we get from the studies, which is basically so I like to think of it as it's not the last step, the studies. It is the last step for that device, but then the study should, 1, help and prove efficacy, but 2, tell us what we can do to make the next device a little bit better, and then a little bit better. And it's a constant improvement. So, in another 10 years, we can say the devices that we started 20 years ago now deliver even more improvements than they did 10 years ago. It's like, how can we constantly improve it? So sorry to answer your question more. So it's a very interesting point. We try to make it as fun and sexy to look at, even our website and everything. Even though these are FDA Class 2 medical devices, they're designed by doctors, they go through trials, but then we try to not make them clinical or medical looking. Because let's say, imagine if they were like steel dilators, they might be very effective, but you may not want to use them unless you go to a doctor and the doctor says you must use them. It's not something you want to do on your own, and you probably can't do it on your own anyway. So and again, this is not something we came up with. It's something the doctors we talked to in the early days, they said the biggest challenge in sexual health is 80% or more people who struggle with some sexual health issue never go to see a specialist or a clinician or even know what that issue is. And if you make it clinical, it will sit in some clinic, yes, but you will never reach 80%, right? Even something as simple as pelvic floor therapy. Most moms after childbirth don't go to a pelvic floor therapist. So if we create a device which only certain pelvic floor therapists know about, no one will ever, or very few people will ever be able to access it. So that was a very big part of creating the brand and making it fun and approachable. So you could buy it just like you would buy a toy, but the purpose was medical. So yeah, it is to look at, to read about, like a pleasure device, and that's the goal, even though it's a medical product. And the closest analogy are condoms. So like if you see an ad for a Trojan condom, it will be all about having fun, not, they wouldn't say, this is made of this material and it's FDA, and which is all true, but it doesn't matter, right? That's not the point. It's not that, it's a medical device. And the point is you use a condom and you have fun with it. And the marketing and the branding and everything you see is about having fun. And that is the biggest thing about sexual health, is unlike any other medical field where being serious is important, right? Every other medical field you can think of, a doctor is serious about the device or the solution. They will talk about its technicalities. But in sexual health, it's the opposite. You have to make it very fun and approachable for people to adopt it and introduce it into the bedroom. And a huge part of that is not everyone wants to admit if they have any problems. Like a lot of the male customers we talk to, they say, we don't really want to talk about erection difficulties to our partner. And then we say, if you introduce this product as the one to stimulate your partner rather than stimulate yourself, then it's a much easier conversation. If you don't want to have the conversation about your erection difficulties, then you say, I want to use this to stimulate you, which is much nicer as a conversation starter than saying, I'm having erectile dysfunction, which many men don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I do think, the stigma and just the kind of discomfort about admitting things change in our bodies sexually, especially as we get older, and just the fear around discussing it. I think the sad part is I'm sure gyno-urologists and, your OB-GYNs probably talk about it, but I would say part of the problem is primary care probably needs to learn more about having these conversations, because it is part of the healthcare paradigm. So, hopefully your message gets out there, and, people like us talking about it all the time helps at least the patient ask about it and ask about options. So let's talk about the indications, like especially what are the things people should look for where this would be a medical need. Obviously, it can be very fun in the bedroom to play with these devices and to use them, but what are the big sexual health issues that they need to watch out for?
So, just focusing on menopause generally, I can talk about the other areas as well to give you a good idea. So with menopause, the main things we look at is arousal disorder and dryness, which is it's often linked. And the tricky thing is, it's not something we would be able to recommend or diagnose. Like, it's not something we do. So yes, if your doctor tells you that you need some kind of help with your dryness, you need some kind of help with your arousal, then that's when we come in. And equally, if you have been searching and you find the information that you're looking for online, because there's lots of really good content like on WebMD, Mayo Clinic, etc., where you get those information and it says like a very simple solution, lube, for example. And then obviously you need to find what lube is right for you, because it's about, skin type, etc. So lubes and vibrators generally, if you already know from, however, whether it's just by your own research or listening to podcasts, talking to doctors, if you know that those are the kind of solutions you're looking for, that's where we come in, as in the solution is vibration and lube. Here are the options you have. We write about lubes and we explain our different vibrators, what they do. So for example, maybe you're not that keen to insert anything because it hurts, right? And you want to do something externally. So one of the vibrators we have is called Libido, and it is purely a labia vibrator. So it sits on the outside and it has a big opening, so you can still have penetrative sex while having that on. But again, if you like the device I was telling you about, which I can quickly show you. So this is the erection device. So what it does, the front bit is purely for stimulation. So if the partner is wearing it and during intercourse, the penis would go in with all of that. It's very high power vibration on the labia. So they get a lot of stimulation. So maybe that's what they want for their labia stimulation. It's worn by the man, and they feel the vibrations get aroused, get wet. Legato is similar to that. Crescendo goes in. It's very much it's like 2 fingers. It goes inside and stimulates exactly where you need the stimulation. So that's kind of so yeah, I like to think of it as 2 steps. Figure out from somewhere, whether it's from a specialist or from your own research, what is it that you would like to solve, dryness, arousal, etc. Then what the options are, and then if the solutions are lubes and vibrators, that's where we come in. But then there are obviously other things, HRT, etc., which means that everything needs to be considered equally. Because we are not, we would never say, this is the solution, because that's not what we do. So our goal is really to be driven by medical professionals telling people, these are the solutions that exist. And then we are one of many solutions. And our specialization is how do we make it very effective? So if vibration is the solution, how can we deliver the best frequency, clinically proven, in the best way, so you get that in the right point on your body, which would have the most impact. So that's really what we do.
That's great. Because often I may hear from, let's say, a woman who may not be in a relationship right now, and it's like, I don't, I don't need to use anything like that because I'm not in a relationship. And it's interesting because I do ask about sexual activity, sexual health, what's it like? And, I think women in this age group often start to feel like they're invisible, right? Because they've lost a little bit of the sexual desire and urge. And so it could be something as simple as helping you feel more sexually alive, more feminine, if that's how you define yourself. But I think it's really important to look at some of the other things that, these devices like yours also help with, that are very medical problems, like pelvic floor pain and vulvar pain and urinary incontinence. Talk about that, because then that really takes it and says, okay, even if you're uncomfortable about talking about using this in the bedroom, most women will say, we joke, over 50, no jumping jacks, right? Because there's a high risk for urinary incontinence. So talk about those things, because I think that's great.
Let's talk about pelvic floor therapy. It's because it's the area we started with. That was the very first thing back in 2012, 2013. So the first thing we started working on was new mums, pain after childbirth. What was the current solution, and which still is the current solution, is using 2 fingers. The therapist would reach inside the vagina, massage the areas to alleviate pain or address scar tissue. So what we created, which is this one, is literally a 2-finger device, which bends. It literally is the same thickness and the same width. It's identical to 2 fingers. And then there's 2 things. One, the therapist can bend it and reach exactly where they need, okay, in the ways that they want to deliver at the right point. Or, and this is the best bit, is the therapist could train the user, or they could get trained, watching a video or reading a book, on how to use it themselves. And that's where the difference is, because imagine, a mom with a young kid doesn't have much time. Going to a therapist, that it's probably like a 2-hour thing, out of a day, which she hardly has any time. And it's also expensive. And if she has to go to a therapist every week, time and money becomes an issue. So this was created by therapists to help people who either have no access to PTs because there just isn't any in their area, or even if they did, they don't have time or money to go. So, and really all it does, again, it's so simple, is it acts like a finger that you reach inside and vibrate at the right frequency, which you just set on the device, turn it on, and you select a frequency, and make it as weak or as intense as you want, based on how you feel. So it's really designed to be super user friendly. They can use it without needing any expert assistance. There's a book. We have a visual book we send with the device, which has pictures and angles and everything. So it just makes it super easy for people to use it. So pelvic floor therapy, that's what this is about. on vulvar pain. So we have another device, which is a smaller device, which has been going through a very big clinical trial with NHS, which is in the UK, the National Health Service, the government's healthcare. And it's been 3.5 years, so it will finish soon. And that one is on vulvodynia, and it already has very good results. So that should get published later this year. And it's just a very small device that you can hold, either, on your own or during intercourse, on the vulva and labia, and alleviate pain. So that's another one. And penetration pain, again, very much going back to dryness, for example, either external or internal vibration. So internal, this would be the ideal one, just because you can be very precise. External, it could either be the one worn by the partner, so you get full 360 vibration on the outside, or the other device, Legato, which just sits at the entrance and vibrates the whole labia to create. All of it is exactly the same fundamental, which is generate fresh blood flow, oxygenated blood coming to the area, increasing arousal, reducing pain. And that's all vibration does. And it's no different from, let's say, a Theragun on your back. It's very much the same theory. It's just much higher intensity, higher frequency when it comes to Theragun and back, whereas it's much gentler and softer when it comes to genitals.
So you brought up a good point that it's all about kind of vibration and blood flow, because I think a lot of people don't really recognize, I know we do medically, but I don't think a lot of people recognize that a lot of the sexual dysfunction that we get may be driven by hormones and other things, but there's also blood flow problems because of vascular concerns. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Yes,
that's actually a really good point, because the easiest way to relate to it is Viagra. Because Viagra was discovered to be a heart medicine and to help with increasing blood flow. And they discovered the side effect of erections just through studies. And then it became an erectile dysfunction drug. But even now, if you look at, when you do a questionnaire to buy Viagra, the first thing they'll ask you is, do you have any heart conditions? And if you do, you can't take it because it will just increase your blood flow. So all it does, like a medicine like Viagra, is increase blood flow to the whole body. So one of the side effects is headaches, and as a result, the erection is stronger and lasts longer because you have a lot more blood. So with vibration, like with Viagra, the key thing is still stimulation and increasing blood flow. But having said that, the biggest challenge is when there are genuine issues like clogged arteries, then there is only that much you can do to increase blood flow. So that's why when we develop our products, we aim for, say, 80% success rate. Because if we get there, we'd be very happy. Like Viagra has a 70% success. 30% of men are not allowed to take Viagra for health reasons. So, if we can get to 70, 80%, we're very happy, because we know that it wouldn't solve everything. Right? So it will, in theory, it will increase blood flow. But then if the arteries are clogged, like cholesterol, for example, to such an extent that you can't really do much, or there is physiological damage during, say, prostatectomy after prostate cancer, maybe, it is a lot, the route to recovery is a lot longer, with the nerves detached, when the prostate is removed, because the nerves go just above the prostate. So, the honest thing is that it won't work for everyone, but we constantly strive, and this is why the studies and feedback is so essential. It helps us make it a little bit better every time, so we can capture a bit more of that percentage. So more people see a significant change after using it.
I've had quite a few patients over the years that have gone through a removal of their prostate, and as a woman, of course, I don't know what that's like, but how much it changes urination, sexual function, all those things. It is a pretty significant, surgery for somebody to go through. And it never would have occurred to me that vibration could really help a lot of those symptoms. I know as a female.
There's something even better, which is prevention. I mean, this is not clinically proven, so this is more anecdotal. The theory is that if the prostate is regularly stimulated over your lifetime, your chances of getting prostate cancer are lower. Yeah. And the idea is that prostate is a gland that secretes fluids, right? And if you release it by stimulating the prostate, obviously the secretions get released. If you release the secretions, and this is established that it just improves prostate health, and that is a fact. So if you regularly stimulate the prostate and you release secretions, you will improve prostate health. Now, there is no clinical proof that it reduces the chances of prostate cancer, but improving prostate health should, in theory, make your prostate better and reduce your chances of cancer. So the new product that we're working on is a single finger, literally, because that is what clinician, urologist, whoever it is who's looking after your prostate would do. That's literally it. They wear a glove and put some lube, insert it, and check your prostate, right? So we are designing a product not too dissimilar from this, but literally just one finger wide, with a big flared base and very bendy and very soft, that you, as a user, the person can do it themselves. They can insert it very gently, very comfortably, reach their own prostate, and there's a big, powerful vibration, and they can simulate it. And with the goal that it is not that scary experience that men avoid. And the biggest reason men who die of prostate cancer die because they didn't get checked early enough. And that is it. Like, there is no reason that someone should die from prostate cancer if it's caught early, because you can simply remove the prostate, which obviously is not good for quality of life, but it definitely stops you from dying. So if they hadn't had their exams, forever, and then they find out and it's too late, that's really sad. Whereas if they have an annual checkup, which is what here, say, I think 50, when you turn 50, you get a letter from the government every year saying you must do your annual checkup for your prostate. So if you do that, very unlikely that you will die from prostate. You will still get it. If you're going to get it, you still get it. But, it's very unlikely you'll die. But most men are so scared of that one thing. It's only like we're talking about 5 minutes of the entire year of having a doctor put a finger in their anus, that they just don't do it. And then sometimes it's too late. So one of the goals for us is making that a pleasurable, again, going back to the point of how do we make very clinical things sexy. So people actually want to do it, and they make it, something fun. And because that's the only way they will do it. If it's painful and scary, they will do everything to avoid it. So our goal, apart from, making sure that these are actually effective devices and you can deliver genuine medical benefit, needs to be incredibly user-friendly and fun for people to want to use it on their own without having to be told by a doctor, you must use it. So the prostate cancer piece is very interesting. I don't know whether we'll ever be able to, because this is, like, we're talking about a 10-year, 20-year study, whether we'll be able to prove that regular stimulation of prostate leads to lower cancer. If that can be clinically proven, that would be significant, in terms of just changing the way people think of prostate. Because there's this huge difference between heterosexual men and gay men, where heterosexual men just avoid anything to do with anus and rectum and prostate. And there is anecdotal study which surveyed post-prostate cancer survivors, and the percentage of gay men in that cohort was very small. And obviously, there could be many reasons for that, but one of them could be that gay men have regular prostate stimulation and as a result have healthier prostate. So it's a fascinating area, which is a very new area. Prostate cancer wasn't really talked about till like 50 years ago, because prostate cancer is an aging related issue. You're more likely to have it in your 70s, 80s, 90s than in your 40s and 50s. And I imagine 100 years ago, the life expectancy wasn't much above 60. So if you didn't live beyond 60.
So as a man at 50, you'd have to start, ideally, that's what NHS here in the UK says, is you must get your annual prostate check. And that's really key, because if you leave it too late, and the cancer spreads, that might mean you die from it. So I don't know if you've read about this, the study on just a post prostate cancer recovery survey that was run a few years ago showed the majority of the participants were heterosexual, and prostate cancer is much smaller in the gay community simply because, or the assumption is that they have regular prostate stimulation, which leads to better prostate health. So that's something which would be fascinating if it can be proven as a very long-term, 20 years long study where we monitor men who have regular prostate stimulation and monitor men equally who don't have any prostate stimulation, and whether, at some point, when we look at the prostate cancer population amongst that whole group, whether there is a very direct correlation between men who have prostate cancer and having regular prostate stimulation. So it is just such a fascinating topic, simply because it is a new area, and it is by far the most common cancer in men. And the longer we live, and especially if life expectancy becomes 100 on average by the end of this century, this would become definitely the biggest topic, because the older we are, the more likely to have prostate cancer.
Yeah,
so
I remember somebody saying that, like, if a man is over 80, he's going to have, the likelihood is he's going to have some level of prostate dysfunction, if not prostate cancer, just because it's an aging process.
It's an age thing, yes, exactly, yeah. But that's the thing I would love to prove is it doesn't have to be, right? And everyone assumes it's inevitable because the amount of prostate stimulation is very limited. So what if there is proof that if you stimulate your prostate regularly, you reduce your chances of prostate cancer massively? So I think that study would be significant.
Yeah. So let's talk about ways in which people can have, because like you've kind of brought it up several times, to sort of make this playful in the room, sort of bring it into the relationship as part of the sexual experience rather than a medical device that you have to use clinically 3 times a week. So obviously you make aesthetically pleasing devices, so they not only do what they do, but they don't look highly clinical. What are some of your suggestions? I know you probably have some even on your website on how to bring it up, with your partner. What would you say?
This is such a exciting topic. I love this one. We get the most interesting questions from all over the world who reach out to us and ask us questions about how do I talk about this, and often it is far more complicated than the health stuff. Like I remember someone from Algeria once contacted us saying, I'm in a heterosexual marriage. This was a woman in a heterosexual marriage, and she had always fantasized about other women, and she wanted to know how to talk about it with her husband, that she would love to introduce another woman or try something. And Algeria is a very conservative country, so we've written loads of pieces about it, and because we are a big fan of action oriented writing, like something you can actually read and do something, not just read for theoretical purposes. But equally, we want to make sure it is incredibly safe for the person. So this is an example which can translate to anything. So we say, find a newspaper that you and your partner respect. Okay. It's something that it's not silly, not like Playboy, which can be fun, but you don't respect the content in it. You think it's nice and cool and funny to look at, but if someone wrote an article, maybe you wouldn't take it that seriously. Yeah, like a health article. Okay. Equally, you might think, New York Times, if it's written, is done properly with lots of journalists and lots of research, etc. So whatever that newspaper is, like here at BBC, whatever it is, ideally find that and the topic. So threesomes, like if I'm here in London, I would say threesomes, BBC, and see what articles have been written on New York Times, threesome, right? If that's what I'm looking for, once I find it, then I would share it with my partner, and I wouldn't say anything positive and negative, because we want to keep it very safe, right? And that's the biggest worry. The biggest problem with conversations is the fear of rejection. And most people are scared of fear of rejection, and they don't talk about things they should really talk about with their partner. If you share an article from a newspaper, which you read anyway, that's very easy, right? You share it, you say, oh, I came across this. It's interesting that New York Times is writing about threesomes. That way, if your partner says, oh, this is very cool, then you know it's positive and you can take the conversation further. But if they say, oh my God, this is terrible, the world has gone to shit, then you know that this is not something you should venture into. So and this is through years and years of, research and lots of cohorts, studies, feedback from sex therapists, relationship coaches, is how do we help people with really simple things that they can do immediately. They don't have to go and, spend weeks on research or whatever. They can do it immediately. And that is the starting point, the inception. So extending that to any topic you can think of, whether it's a use of sex toys in the bedroom, itself is a topic. Use of lubes in a bedroom, or even going to a doctor to talk about a problem. Literally any topic that there is a barrier in your mind to talk about is. So I'll give you a very basic example. Let's say you want your partner to do a fertility test, okay, and you're not sure what's the issue, and you're trying to get pregnant, and you're like, how do I tell him that I want him to do a fertility test? And then you're like, you know what, he loves reading TechCrunch, and there is this article about a fertility startup, right? And you share that, like, oh wow, look, there's a cool startup which has raised 200 million, and they have this little kit, and immediately you get your results, and it's so cool. You can just say, it's interesting, and then see whether he is interested in that. So like every topic can be approached this way in a very safe way. So it's a very, it's like a playbook, trusted newspaper for that person. For that person, TechCrunch might be the newspaper they read the most. And they're like, oh, this is a very cool article in TechCrunch, and I'm going to check it out. So this is how we help people start conversations on any topic that you can think of.
That's great, because it's really vulnerable, particularly if you've been in a relationship for a really long time. You would think that it would be the opposite, but I hear this a lot in the clinic.
It gets worse.
Yeah, it gets worse, not better.
No, because you have more to lose from that rejection. So you are much more careful about what you say.
Yeah, it's you're like, oh, you're 25 years together. You're really familiar with each other. You think that it'd be way deeper, but they're like, I don't want to tell them that. I don't want to tell them how I feel, or I want to try this in the bedroom. I remember reading an article, and I got to go dig it back up, but it was a study and a survey of women, and they were talking about happiness in marriages and things like that. And they said, what makes sexual desire more positive for a woman is a new partner. And that doesn't mean that they really need a new partner. What they need is novelty, right? Familiar gets old. And so, but they are too scared to talk about it. So I love your suggestion.
This is so true. We have a very funny comedian in England called Michael McIntyre, and he has some of the best family jokes because he's married, has two kids, like he's probably been with his wife for 20 years. And he said, I wanted to spice things up. So I asked he started with, this might be too much information, but I'm going to share it anyway. I don't think his wife was very happy about it, but he said, I asked my wife, so what do you think I should do to spice up our date night? And she said, do you really want to know? Like, yeah, tell me what excites you the most. And she's like, black men. This is a white English guy, just to give you context. And he was like, what am I supposed to do about this?
right. Like, yeah, that's a little point blank. That's not, need more context.
No, she did ask him like 10 times, like, are you really sure you want to know the truth? He's like, yeah, I'll do whatever. Like, are you really sure? I think this is the biggest challenge, 20 years in, you're not sure what the answer will be. And you don't ask.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then you just therefore don't ask, and then you don't get your needs met or vice versa. So, So
this is on Netflix. It's absolutely brilliant, the whole thing. It's so funny.
I'll have to check that out for sure. So I really love your suggestion because it's kind of, I always joke that you need rent a stranger, like when you're trying to make lifestyle changes and things like that. Cause I see a lot of women, obviously, but they want, if they have a male partner, they want to bring him along for the ride, and men generally aren't as proactive. And I was like, sometimes you just need rent a stranger because that's putting you in the wrong role. You don't need to manage his health. You need somebody else to do it. So that's awesome. So tell everybody how they can find you, how they can find your products, and where they can look you up online.
Very simple. We're MysteryVibe everywhere, whether it's MysteryVibe.com, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. It's simple. We add mystery to your bedroom, so it's MysteryVibe.
Awesome. And if anybody's watching, Soum did some demonstrations of some different products. So if you want to go on our YouTube channel and watch this, you can see some of the demonstrations of the different products. Just, a lot of times people aren't quite sure what we're talking about, so you can check them out. And obviously you can check them out online as well. So thank you, Dr. Soum, for being on with us, and everybody run out to MysteryVibe and bring some spice back to your bedroom. And then we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Menopause Mastery podcast. You are why I'm here, and I am so very grateful. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any wisdom on creating the most exceptional life on our terms. If this episode has helped you in any way, please share it with a friend to spread the love, and together we rise. You can follow me on social media at Betty Murray PhD, and you can reach me online at bettymurray.com.